Good evening. My name is Logan Court, and I am a student project manager at the Clark Forum for Contemporary Issues at Dickinson College. I have a few housekeeping items for us this evening, but before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that Dickinson College is on the unceded lands of the Susquehannock Nation. We acknowledge the many indigenous peoples that lived with these lands, as well as the thousands of indigenous children forced into the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, starting in 1879 as part of a federal cultural eradication effort. On behalf of Dickinson College, the Clark Forum, the Departments of Mathematics and Computer Science, Biology, Chemistry, Earth Sciences, Environmental Studies, Psychology, and Physics and Astronomy, and the Churchill Fund, I would like to welcome you to the 70th Annual Joseph Priestley Award celebration, entitled How Duolingo Uses AI to Assess, Engage, and Teach Better. This program is part of the Clark Forum's Leadership in an Age of Uncertainty series. There'll be a question and answer session immediately following the program, so please hold all questions until that time. The Clark Forum welcomes differences of opinion expressed politely, thoughtfully, and succinctly, and disruptive behavior or harassment of the speakers, member of the Dickinson community, or audience members will not be tolerated. As a show of respect to our speakers and everyone in attendance, please stay until the end of the program, including the question and answer session. At this time, I ask you to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. And now, please join me in welcoming President John Jones.
Thank you so much, Logan, and welcome. It is a great crowd. I'm delighted to see everyone here for what promises to be a wonderful ceremony, followed by a great lecture as well. It's my honor to welcome you to the 2022 Priestley celebration. While this is my first year to open up this prestigious event, I know that the annual celebration of the Priestley Award is always a highlight of the college's academic year. And I will add that it is especially so, given that this marks the 70th year that the award has been presented at Dickinson College. That is a tremendous milestone in and of itself. For each of these 70 years, the college community has gathered to present this award to a distinguished scientist in memory of Joseph Priestley, who of course was the discoverer of oxygen and a close friend of our founder, Dr. Benjamin Rush. The presentation of this award demonstrates the college's strong commitment to the advancement of sciences as an integral and central focus of the liberal arts curriculum. It is a commitment that demonstrates through our vibrant and innovative faculty, or is demonstrated through our vibrant and innovative faculty and our state-of-the-art science facilities. Dr. Rush actively sought out other revolutionary thinkers of his time, including Joseph Priestley. Priestley was born in Leeds, or near Leeds, England, in 1733, and he actually set out to prepare for a career in the ministry. He developed, however, a deep and active fascination with science. In pursuing this interest, Priestley turned to investigations of what he termed different types of air, explorations that led to the discovery of 9 gases, including sulfur dioxide, ammonia, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and a gas that was later named oxygen. Priestley's increasingly unorthodox views on theology, coupled with his outspoken opposition to the English slave trade and his support of the American and French revolutions, ultimately forced him to flee England for America in 1794. Once in America, Priestley soon formed a close friendship with the new nation's foremost physician, and that, of course, was Dr. Rush. Although Dr. Priestley died only 10 years after arriving in America, his connection to Dickinson College continued when we acquired much of Priestley's equipment, thereby ensuring that Dickinson students would have state-of-the-art scientific instruments with which to work in that time. You can see this equipment, including a large burning glass, an air gun, and a reflecting telescope in our archives. These items represent some of the earliest examples of student-faculty research at Dickinson, a rich tradition that obviously has continued and grown since that time. As I noted earlier, 69 distinguished scientists, including 16 Nobel laureates, have received the prestigious award that we give tonight previously. The list of early Priestley awardees include Harold Urey, discoverer of deuterium, Linus Pauling, recipient of a Nobel in chemistry and the Nobel Peace Prize, nuclear physicist Edward Teller, and climatologist Maurice Ewing. More recent honorees include Timothy Gowers, Fields Medal recipient, Vinton Cerf, a computer scientist who contributed to the creation of the Internet, Joan Steitz, a molecular biochemist known for her foundational work on aspects of RNA and her advocacy for women in science. And our most recent recipient, Jane Lubchenco, for her significant contributions to the field of environmental science and her efforts to understand and protect ocean ecosystems. Now, to introduce our newest recipient of the Joseph Priestley Award, I am pleased to introduce Professor Farhan Siddiqui, Assistant Professor of Computer Science. Professor Siddiqui, would you please come forward to introduce our distinguished honoree?
Thank you, President Jones. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming together to celebrate the 2022 Priestley Award ceremony. It is my great pleasure to introduce the recipient of this year's Joseph Priestley Award, Dr. Luis von Ahn. Dr. von Ahn is a distinguished computer scientist and one of the most successful and admired entrepreneurs of our times. He is being recognized today for his pioneering work in a field of computer science called human computation, and for his innovations that are breaking the barriers to education faced by underprivileged communities around the world. Dr. von Ahn came to the United States from Guatemala to pursue his higher education. He received a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Duke University in the year 2000, and a PhD in computer science from Carnegie Mellon in 2005. In his early doctoral work, he invented the CAPTCHA that made it possible to block robotic software from submitting large-scale bogus online requests. I'm sure you've all filled out CAPTCHAs. They're the wavy, distorted characters that make you squint, but prove to a website that you're human and not a malicious bot. Dr. von Ahn's PhD thesis conceived the idea of human computation, which refers to techniques that combine human brain power with computers to solve large-scale problems that neither can solve alone. Using this idea, Dr. von Ahn designed games with a purpose in which people, as a side effect of playing, perform tasks that computers are unable to perform. One of these notable games that exemplifies human computation is the ESP game for image recognition, in which randomly paired players are shown an image and asked to agree on a word that would be an appropriate label for the image. A label is stored after a certain number of players have agreed on it. ESP was acquired by Google in 2006 and was used to improve the accuracy of Google image search. In 2007, Dr. von Ahn revisited the idea of the CAPTCHA that takes an average user about 10 seconds to solve. He wanted to utilize those 10 seconds of human brain time for something useful. That's when he invented the reCAPTCHA, which still proved users were humans, but simultaneously helped digitize books. reCAPTCHA was also acquired by Google in 2009. It has helped digitize millions of books and newspaper articles to date. In 2009, Dr. von Ahn started developing Duolingo as a means of using technology to make education free and accessible to everyone. Duolingo was launched in 2011, and it has grown to become the most popular language learning platform worldwide, attracting over 500 million users. The company is now planning to go beyond its language courses with new offerings in literacy and math. Duolingo, as we will hear shortly, uses artificial intelligence techniques such as machine learning and natural language processing to keep its learners active and engaged. Last year, Dr. von Ahn joined Vice President Kamala Harris's Call to Action initiative to foster economic development in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. His distinctive approach to problem solving has earned him numerous distinctions. Dr. von Ahn was named one of the 10 most brilliant scientists by Popular Science magazine, one of the 50 best brains in science by Discover, one of the top young innovators under 35 by MIT Technology Review, one of the 100 most innovative people in business by Fast Company magazine, and in 2018, he won the Lemelson MIT Prize. Dr. von Ahn is a great advocate for bringing equality in society by creating universally accessible educational opportunities and changing lives by addressing problems of illiteracy globally. Tonight, we are delighted to honor him here at Dickinson with the Joseph Priestley Award and to hear from him about Duolingo. I now request President Jones and Dr. von Ahn to please come to the podium for the award presentation.
I can't imagine, after hearing that, a more worthy recipient, and we are so honored to have you here tonight. That you've accomplished so much in your young life is truly remarkable and inspirational, and I hope it affects everyone else the same way. So we are thrilled to have you here, Doctor. The Priestley Award, which includes a bronze medallion with the likeness of Dr. Priestley, was first presented in 1952 and has been presented each year since then to a distinguished scientist honored for discoveries that contribute to the welfare of all of humankind. Dr. von Ahn, I am pleased to present you the Dickinson College Priestley Award in recognition of your extraordinary achievements. The citation for this award reads as follows. Luis von Ahn receives the Joseph Priestley Award for pioneering contributions to human computation, which demonstrate the power of computing systems to engage with society to enable positive social change and to reduce global inequality. So we have this beautiful medal, and we have to watch. I've been warned that it will fall out if I'm not careful. It's inscribed on the back. And it is my great pleasure and honor to give that to you. We'll get one more picture. Dan, you want to get one more picture, Dan? Dan's always on the job. Thank you, Dan. We take instruction well.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? Yes? It all good? Okay. Okay. So this is the first tech check. The second one is to see whether this thing works. We will see in a second. Okay, so thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the award, and thank you for having me here. I've had a great day today. And let me just tell you a little bit about the work that I've been doing. But I'm going to start with something that, well, by now it feels like ancient history to me. It's kind of one of the first few things that I worked on. And let's see if this works. Yes, good. Okay, so this. Okay, how many of you have had to fill out a web form where you've had to read these distorted characters like that? Great, excellent. How many of you found it really, really annoying? Excellent. Okay, so I invented that. That's the thing. That thing is called a CAPTCHA, and the reason is there is to make sure that you, the entity filling out the form, are actually a human and not some sort of computer program that was written to submit the form millions of times. And the reason it works is because humans are better than computers, or at least at the time. This is no longer as true. But at the time, this is like 20 years ago, humans were way better than computers at reading these distorted characters. So humans could do it, computers could not, so this was a test to tell whether something was a human or a computer. For example, in the case of Ticketmaster, the reason you have to type those in is because they're selling tickets, and people would write programs to buy all of the concert tickets like in a second. So a human can't do that very much, so this is why they put a test to make sure that you basically, as a human, can only buy a few of them as opposed to all the concert tickets at once. Okay, so I invented that, I don't know, 22 years ago, and at some point, it started being used by essentially every single website in the world. Great, that felt really good. At some point, I did a little back-of-the-envelope calculation and realized that about 200 million times a day, somebody was typing one of these. At first, when I realized this, I was quite proud of myself. I thought, look at the impact that my work has had. But then I started feeling bad, because the thing is, each time you type one of these, first of all, everybody finds them annoying. That's 200 million times a day, somebody hates me. Secondly, each time you type one of these, you waste 10 seconds of your time. And if you multiply 10 seconds by 200 million, you get that humanity as a whole is wasting 500,000 hours every day typing these annoying things. So I started feeling bad. Because it was because of me. So then I started thinking, is there any way in which we can use this time for something that is good for humanity? See, during those 10 seconds while you're typing one of these, your brain is doing something amazing. Your brain is doing something that, at the time at least, we couldn't get computers to do. Despite 50 years of research in computer science, we could not get computers to do this, but you were doing it. And you were doing it, so could we get you to do something useful at the same time? And I started thinking about that, and it occurred to me that you could. And this is kind of the second go-around of this project. The original project was called CAPTCHA, which, by the way, stands for something. It's like an acronym, but it's super long. It's completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. You don't have to remember that. So the first instantiation was called CAPTCHA. The second one is called reCAPTCHA, and the idea was this. The idea was, during those 10 seconds while you're typing a CAPTCHA, we got you to do something useful for humanity. And it was, we got you to help us digitize books. So let me explain how that worked. So at the time, this is the year maybe 2006, at the time, there were a lot of projects starting to digitize all of the world's books. Basically, they had been, literally 100 million books had been written before the internet. They were there, and we wanted to put them in the internet. That's kind of what the world wanted to do. Google had a project to do that. The Internet Archive was trying to do that, et cetera. And the way the process worked is, you started with a book, and then you scanned every single page. Now, scanning it, literally all it is taking a digital photograph of every page of the book. The next step in the process is that the computer needed to decipher, these are pictures of words. The computer needed to decipher all the words so that we had basically a text file of all these words so that they could be searched, et cetera. The problem is that for older books where the ink had faded, or maybe the picture was a little blurry, the computer could not recognize about 30% of the words. So the book digitization process was just not working super well. And that's what was going on. But it occurred to me that maybe we could get people to read those words that the computer could not recognize while they were typing CAPTCHAs on the internet. And this actually turned out to work. So whenever you were typing a CAPTCHA, at first these words were made up. But at some point, this changed into the words were coming from books that were being digitized that the computer could not recognize. And then we would give them to you. Whenever we were trying to get tickets on Ticketmaster, you would get these words, and what you typed was used to help digitize a book. And this happened, and this worked really well. Now, you may be wondering a few things. The first question that you may be wondering is, wait a second. This is a word that just came out of a book. The computer didn't know what it was. We gave it to somebody. How do we know whether they typed it correctly? Because the computer doesn't know the answer. How do we know whether they typed it correctly? So the solution to that problem is, first of all, this is why at some point we started giving people two words. So one word is a word for which the computer did know the answer. We already figured it out. The other word is a brand new word. And we tell people, please type both. And we don't tell them which one's which. And if they type the word for which we already knew the answer correctly, we assume that they are a human, and also get some confidence that they typed the other word correctly. And if we repeat this process to like 10 different people and they all agree on what the new word is, then that word is digitized with very high accuracy. So that's how the process worked. So this worked, and at some point, at the height of it, this was digitizing on the order of about 2 million books a year. Actually, it's the equivalent of 2 million books a year, because they were digitizing also newspapers and all kinds of other things. So this worked out pretty well, and at some point this got acquired by Google, and it was used to help digitize a lot of the world's books by just people having, typing captchas kind of one word at a time. So this is a previous project that I did, and I like to talk about it because this is, in around 2009, this became a company, and this then got sold to Google. And I found myself in a pretty interesting position. I had just sold my second company to Google. I didn't have to work. And I thought, well, what should I do with the rest of my life? I probably should do something. I tried watching TV. I got bored pretty fast. And then I decided to start another project. But this time, I really wanted to do something that was related to my passion, which has always been education. This is why I became a professor. So I wanted to do something related to education. So this is where I decided to start with my PhD student, who, by the way, has a most amazing name. This is my PhD student in computer science. His name is Severin Hacker, and it's not made up. It's amazing. It comes from hacker, like hacking. But anyways, it's Severin Hacker. So with him, we decided to start something that would do something related to education. In fact, at first, we didn't know what we wanted to do. We were just like, well, let's just do something to teach people. Now, we were thinking about it, and one of the first few things that I said is, well, my views on education are very influenced by where I'm from. I am from Guatemala. This is a public service announcement, by the way. That is where Guatemala is. Also, that is not where they keep the prisoners. That is Guantanamo. Anyways, Guatemala is a very poor country. And a lot of people talk about education as something that brings equality to different social classes, but I always saw it as the opposite, as something that brings inequality. Because what happens in practice, especially in poor countries, which, by the way, the majority of countries in the world are poor countries, what happens in practice is that people who have a lot of money can buy themselves the best education in the world, and therefore continue having a lot of money because they're very well educated, whereas people who don't have very much money barely learn how to read and write, and therefore never make a lot of money. So I wanted to do something that would give equal access to education to everybody. And so we started Duolingo actually with a mission, even before we knew what we wanted to teach. Even, by the way, the company at the time didn't have a name. It wasn't even a company. It was just, we're just like, let's just do something. And we started with this mission, which was, okay, I want to do, for the rest of my life, I want to develop the best education in the world and make it universally available. This is what I wanted to do. And with my PhD student, we decided to do this. But the thing about education, especially if you're involved in education, which many of you are, is that it's very general. You can teach anything. There's all kinds of things you could teach. So we started thinking, okay, well, how should we start? And it occurred to us, we started thinking, it occurred to us, let's start by teaching one thing. And we started thinking, okay, well, what should we teach first? Should we teach math? Should we teach computer science? What should we teach? And at some point, we realized that the way we wanted to start was by teaching languages. And there's many reasons for that, but the biggest one is that a lot of people are learning languages. There's about 1.8 billion people in the world learning a foreign language. And in particular, the language that people are learning is English. The majority of these people are learning English, and the reason for that is because knowledge of English can significantly improve your life prospects. In most countries in the world, if you know English, you can double your income potential. This happens to also be true in the United States, by the way. Obviously, if you know English, you can make a lot more money. A lot of people were learning languages, and English, also the other thing that we really liked about English is English is one of the few things that people can learn, and it can immediately improve their income potential. See, and directly. See, for example, you can learn, I love math. I wanted to start teaching math, but math, usually you learn math to learn physics, to then become an engineer, to finally then make more money. See, with English, just you know English, you make more money. So it's pretty direct. For many reasons, we decided, okay, let's get started with teaching languages. At the time, we thought, okay, we're going to figure out how to teach languages. We're going to conquer the language teaching world in like a year, and then we're going to teach everything. This is what we thought. This was 10 years ago. We are still working on languages, okay? This is what we thought. So what we did is we launched in the year, well, we started the launch in the year 2011, but technically we really launched in the year 2012. We launched this thing called Duolingo, which at first what it was is it was a website, duolingo.com, where the idea was you can learn a language for free. That was it. And you know, you can come in, you can learn a language for free. Soon after launching the website, we decided to make an app, make an iPhone app and an Android app. And soon after we launched our apps, they became the most downloaded apps in the education category. So not just of language learning, but of any kind of education, we became the most downloaded app of all education apps. And we have been for the last 8 years in a row. So every single year, we're the most downloaded app in all of education worldwide. And by now, there's a lot of really amazing statistics. So for example, there are more people learning languages on Duolingo in the US than there are people learning languages across all US high schools combined. And there's a lot of really amazing statistics like that. And now, one of the questions is, why is it that we got so popular? I mean, and by the way, the answer to that is not marketing. We did not spend $100 million marketing or anything like that. The reason we got so popular is this, you know, it's been downloaded by over 500 million times. There's 3 reasons why I think Duolingo became very popular. The first one is that we benefited a lot from the timing. We were there at the right time. In 2012, there was a platform shift. Before that, it was mostly the websites. After that, it's mostly apps. We, in 2012, launched a very high-quality app. And you know, most people at the time, and this was, by the way, pure luck. It's not like we knew that apps were going to be. We just kind of were like, apps are probably going to get big at some point. And so we spent most of our efforts making an app as opposed to a website. So we launched a very high-quality app. And because of that, for example, Apple chose us as the iPhone app of the year. Among like millions of apps, we're the iPhone app of the year because we launched a very high-quality app. So the fact that we're mobile first is one important thing. Another one is free. You know, at the time, there were other things to learn languages. For example, one very popular here in the United States was called Rosetta Stone. At the time, Rosetta Stone was $700. It was free to use Duolingo, and it was an app. So a lot of people basically downloaded it, told their friends. And then the last thing, which I think is the most important thing, we realized early on that the hardest thing about learning a language is staying motivated. Learning a language by yourself. It's different when you're, but if you're learning a language, and this is probably true learning anything about, this is probably true about learning anything by yourself, the hardest thing is staying motivated. So we decided to make Duolingo as fun as possible. And because of that, you know, people would download it, they would have a lot of fun, they would tell their friends, and this is how we grew a lot. This is, I like this term, this is what happens when you compare on Google searching for Duolingo. So in the blue is the number of searches for Duolingo, in red is the number of searches for the term learn Spanish. So in that way, we really pretty much own the category. We have, I don't know, 10, 15 times as many people searching for Duolingo than for learn Spanish. And that's also true if you compare with learn French, learn German, and if you sum them all up, still Duolingo beats. This is another one. This is an interesting one. This is the number of monthly active users that we have on Duolingo. Let me show you. So basically, for each month there, that's the number of active users for that month. You can see a couple of things. The first is, well, we've been growing steadily since we launched. The second thing that is very interesting here is, you see that spike above 320? That's the pandemic. So what happened is we were growing pretty fast. Then the pandemic, boom. And then that's the major lockdown. Then after the lockdown eased, we actually went down. You see, went down after that. But it settled at a higher place than it would have had the pandemic not happened. Then after that, it's basically kind of the same as it was before, sort of growing steadily, but after the pandemic. So that is the impact of the pandemic on Duolingo. It's that. What else to say about that? So that's that. By now, of course, you know, when we launched, we only taught English, Spanish, and German. Funny story about German. By the way, I made the first Duolingo Spanish course. It was not particularly good, but I made it because I'm a native Spanish speaker. The first German course was made by my co-founder, Severin, who's Swiss German. See, here's the thing. He told me he could make the German course. I did not realize at the time that Swiss German is a different language than German. So the Spanish course was not very good at the beginning. The German course was even worse because it basically was a Swiss German course, and I didn't understand that until a few people told me. They're like, it's different. I'm like, oh, interesting. So I was upset at him that he didn't tell me that. Anyways, by now we teach a lot of languages. We teach all the large languages that you've heard of course, German, Spanish, Japanese, etc. We also teach some smaller languages. We teach Irish. We teach High Valyrian from Game of Thrones. We teach Klingon from Star Trek. And we teach a lot of languages. Fun fact, more people on Duolingo are learning Klingon than there are people learning on Duolingo Vietnamese. I don't know what that says about the world. It's just a fact. I kind of want to apologize about that, but it's not me. But I kind of want to apologize about that. So this type of stuff happens. Another interesting thing about the different languages that we teach, the smaller languages that we add on Duolingo is pretty amazing. Whenever we add a small language to Duolingo, we really can actually change its course. A good example is Irish. There are 94,000 native Irish speakers, and there are 1 million people learning Irish on Duolingo. So we actually can, basically we have 10, we can multiply the number of speakers by a factor of 10 just because we added to our platform. And that's something that it feels very good to be able to do that. This is why we keep adding some endangered languages. We can't add that many per year because it actually requires quite a bit of effort to add each one to a high, to high quality, but we keep adding them. Every year we add 3 or 4 new endangered languages. We're working on adding Zulu and Maori. Those are the 2 ones that we're working on adding. Every time that I go somewhere and I give a talk, everybody asks me to add a different language. I am going to, in advance, apologize. We've heard about almost every language that you've told us that you want to tell me. We've heard, and we're going to work on it. Also, people ask me sometimes, what is the process for deciding how to add a language to Duolingo? It is a lot less scientific than you would imagine, and for that I also apologize. Basically, we look at a few things. So we do look at interests, so we know what people are interested in learning because we kind of see people tell us. So we look at that, but also another thing that matters is whether there's somebody inside the company that is kind of willing to champion that language, and that ends up mattering a lot. And so this is where sometimes we add languages where sometimes we upset people with like, wait, how could you have added that language when my language is so much better? But it probably just meant that somebody inside the company was willing to champion that language. Okay, let me tell you another thing. I mean, I was talking about, in Duolingo, one of the things that makes Duolingo most successful is the fact that we've made it as fun as possible. So if you've ever used Duolingo, this is what Duolingo looks like. So on the left is the home screen of Duolingo. On the right, this is what the lessons look like. You see, it looks a lot like a game. And we've done that on purpose, is to basically keep people engaged. So on the left, you see, the way learning a language works on Duolingo is that you have these circles. We call them skills. And each one teaches you a specific aspect of the language. So for example, the one that has the little burger there, that probably teaches you, it's called food, and that probably teaches you how to order at a restaurant, etc. And the idea is that at the very beginning, you start with 1 unit unlocked, and you have to complete it to unlock the next row of units. You have to complete that to unlock the next row, etc. So there's this unlocking mechanism that is pretty fun and gamified. And the way you complete a unit is basically by doing these lessons. And each lesson consists of some number of exercises that are like this one. And in each exercise, there are different types. In each of them, you may have to translate something, or you may have to listen and type what was said, or you may have to speak to the app and it tells you whether you said it correctly or not. So there's exercises of different types. And then whenever you get something right, all kinds of good things happen on the screen. So this is, it's about to get it right. And then the character does a little dance, there's a progress bar that goes up, etc. And so we've programmed a lot of these, we call them dopamine hits, where, like whenever you do something good, good stuff happens on the screen and you feel really good. So we do a lot of that to try to, keep people as engaged as possible. Now, one of the things that people may not realize about Duolingo is that even though, it looks really cutesy and like kind of, it's like a little game, etc. What they may not realize is there's incredible sophistication in the background. And, for example, we have a pretty detailed model of each student and what they know. So if each learner on Duolingo, ever since you started using Duolingo, we have been recording every exercise that you get, whether you get it right or wrong. If you get it wrong, we know why you got it wrong. We're like, oh, whatever, you don't know how to conjugate in the past tense or something. And we do that, and then we use all of that data to create a model for each student. So we know for a given student, this particular person is not very good at the past tense, but they're very good at the future tense, or something like that. We just know for all the things. And whenever you start a lesson on Duolingo, we use that to build a lesson that is specific for you. So if you're not very good at the past tense, we're probably going to add more past tense practice in there so that you get better at it. So this is the type of stuff that we can do. Now, this is very important to mention. Imagine if we were to give you a lesson that is composed of only the things that you're bad at, this would be the lesson from hell. Because you're not very good at the past tense, and every single time you start something on Duolingo, it's just the past tense. You get very frustrated, and you go away. So we can't do that. So whenever we build a lesson for each individual, we're trying to optimize for two things. One is we're trying to teach you better. This is where we may bring more past tense if you're not very good at the past tense. But also we're trying to keep you as engaged as possible. The way we do that is that our model can also predict whenever we give you an exercise, it can give us the probability that you're going to get that exercise right. And for every exercise that you give you, on average, we target that you have an 83% chance of getting it right. 83% is the magical number. That is it. And so whenever we give you something, if you have a less than 83% chance of getting it right, it's too hard for you, and you're going to get frustrated. If you have a more than 83% chance of getting it right, it's too easy for you, and you're going to get bored. So we try that, and that makes it so that the lessons are about as engaging as we know how to make them be. But there's a lot of sophistication to be able to do that. And that's one of the things that I find the most amazing about Duolingo. Every single day, we have about, call it 500 million, it's a little more now, let's call it between 500 million and 750 million exercises that are answered by our users every single day. And we use that data to improve how well we teach. One way is by building these student models that I just told you about. Let me tell you another way, which it's something I'm very proud of. By the way, all of this stuff is not my work. It's just, I happen to be the CEO of a company where a lot of people come up with really good ideas. So I'm talking about other people's ideas here. This other one is another idea, which is how we A/B test the curriculum. So the curriculum is just the ordering in which we teach things. There's an ordering. We have so much data that we can actually improve on the standard curricula for teaching languages. It's not like we go nuts and completely change them, but we actually can make improvements. So the types of things that we can do is, for example, we may not know, imagine that we're teaching Portuguese to people in Italy. So these are native Italian speakers who are learning Portuguese. We may not know whether, and by the way, this is a made-up example. So please, somebody who's an expert in linguistics, you're going to tell me, we know the answer to that. I know, but this is a made-up example. We may not know whether we should teach, I don't know, plurals before adjectives or adjectives before plurals to these particular speakers. So if we don't know, what we can do is we can actually run a test to figure this out. So what we would do is we would, for the next 50,000 people that sign up to learn Portuguese from Italy, to half of them at random, we teach them plurals before adjectives. And to the other half, we teach them adjectives before plurals. And then we can measure which ones learn better and which ones stay more engaged, et cetera, and we can figure that out. And then once we figure that out, we're like, okay, well, for these people, we should teach them, call it plurals before adjectives. And that's that. We figure that out, and then we just keep making the course better and better by doing that. So courses get better over time on Duolingo, and they get better at the speed at which we have number of users. So, for example, our course to learn Spanish is much better than our course to learn Esperanto, because many more people are learning Spanish, and therefore we can run many more exercises, many more A/B tests, and so we can actually improve the curriculum a lot faster than we would for something like Esperanto. So we're doing that, and this is why, the other thing is the quality of the courses in Duolingo, it varies quite greatly based on the number of people that are learning it. So our best courses are usually to learn English or French or Spanish, and then the not so good courses are the much smaller languages. So learning Hawaiian is probably a much worse course than learning Spanish. So that's something else. This is something that I'm very proud of also. This is, we did this study. So we try to figure out, we do a lot of measurements inside the app to try to figure out how well we teach, but sometimes we want to do measurements outside of the app to really figure out, compare to other things. So we did this study, and the study was as follows. We took people who started learning on Duolingo, either French, this is what's done for French or Spanish. Bear in mind, these are the better courses. So these results would not carry if we're talking about learning, I don't know, Hawaiian. So these are people who were studying French or Spanish, and they started, and we asked them, did you know any French or Spanish before this? Those who said they knew no French or Spanish, complete beginners, we let them use Duolingo. And then when they got to a point, which is about halfway down the course, it's 5 units of Duolingo, about halfway down the course, we contacted them again and said, hey, did you use anything other than Duolingo to learn? And of those who said they only used Duolingo, Okay, great. We took those and we gave them a standardized test to see how much of the language they knew. And then we compared the results to the same thing, but for people learning after college semesters. And then these are the results. So, and by the way, we did this for listening and reading, the receptive skills, which are easier to teach. But what we found is pretty good. I mean, what we found is that people who had gotten to 5 Duolingo units scored higher than people who had taken 4 university semesters, higher or equal to people who had taken 4 university semesters on reading and listening. So that's something that we're very proud of. We have not done the results for writing. We have done it for speaking. And for speaking, they're a little worse than university semesters. So we're not yet as good. So we're working on that. But yes, this is something that we're very proud of. And it has a lot to do with the fact that we use the data from millions of people to improve it. Basically every year, Duolingo just gets better and better and better. This is just another kind of interesting tidbit. Our learners are pretty split. So we have users in every single country in the world. Our learners are pretty split between those who are learning from English and those who are learning English. Let me explain what I mean by that. 37% of our learners are learning from English. So think of this as a person in the US who already knows English, who's learning Spanish or French or something. That's 37% of our users. 54% of our users are learning English. Think of this as a person, I don't know, in Japan learning English. And then 9% of our users are, English is not involved. So this is a person in Germany learning Japanese or something like that. Now, what's interesting about this is the 2 big buckets of people, their motivations are very, very different. Those who are learning from English, they have funny answers to some questions. They're usually, it's not always true. These, by the way, are major generalizations, what I'm about to say, but they're pretty true. The ones who are learning from English, essentially they're hobby learners. If you're learning French or learning Spanish, they're mostly hobby learners. When you ask them, for example, when you say, what would you do if Duolingo went away? The most common answer is, I guess I would use Instagram more. That's the most common answer. When you ask them, so why did you start using Duolingo? Not the most common answer, but a very common answer is this. I used to play a lot of Candy Crush. And I felt bad about myself. Now I play Duolingo, and at the very least, I'm learning some Italian. That's a very common answer. So this is these people who are learning from English. The people who are learning English, very different. They're doing so to improve their lives. When you ask them, what would you do if Duolingo went away? None of them say, I would stop learning English. They all say, well, I would, I would enroll in a course, I would buy a book, I would do something. They do something. So they're very different. And in a very real sense, those who are learning English are more motivated than those who are learning from English. They are. And when we ask them how motivated we are, for everything that we know, they are more motivated. But here is the paradoxical thing. And I figured this out. Well, we figured this out. But this is the paradoxical thing. So it is true those who are learning English are more motivated. But when you look at engagement metrics, so when you look at engagement metrics, by that I mean how much time do people spend on Duolingo, how often they come back, et cetera. When you look at all the engagement metrics, they are identical between these 2 groups of people. That's very strange, because you would think that those who are learning English spend more time, because they care more. But they don't. And the reason for that, and this speaks to how powerful our game mechanics are. The reason for that is that, yes, it is true, the difference in their motivation, there's some difference in motivation between those 2 groups. But that difference is dwarfed by our gamification mechanics. The main motivation that really keeps people coming back to Duolingo is the gamification mechanics, and those act equally powerfully to both groups of people. So that's very interesting, and in fact, we can do, we've noticed this, we can do, by changing certain things, we can really change how people use Duolingo. For example, at some point, we realized it was better for people to study in the morning than at night. Turns out that's better for learning. So we actually did stuff to get people to learn more in the morning. So for example, we have these notifications, we started sending them a little earlier. And so turns out now people study earlier. So we can do all kinds of things to try to get people to do, use the app differently with these gamification mechanics, et cetera. So that's something pretty interesting. Now here's the other. I want to talk a little bit about this one. So people chuckle because of this. So one of the most powerful things that we have going on at Duolingo is the notifications that we have. People forget to use the app, forget to learn, and so we send them notifications to try to keep them coming back. This all started a few years ago. When we started Duolingo, by the way, there were no notifications. It was just Duolingo. You could use Duolingo, and that was that. A lot of people forgot to use it the next day and the next day, etc. It occurred to us, you know what? Maybe we should remind them. So it occurred to somebody to send a notification a couple of days later. If you haven't used Duolingo, we'll send you a notification a couple of days later. Turned out that was amazing. People come back. If you send a notification, people come back. Okay, that was great. Send one notification, that's good. We're smart. Send 2 notifications. And we did that. And guess what? More people come back. Well, how about we send 3? More people come back. And so we just kept on adding more and more notifications. At some point, at 5, I said, okay, everybody, we cannot send more than 5 notifications. If they haven't come back after the 5th notification, that's just spammy. Let's not send more than 5. And okay, so we started, the people working at Duolingo were like, okay, we have 5 notifications to work with. Let's optimize that. So we started figuring out when to send them. Turns out, it's better to send, the best time to send a notification one day after you've used Duolingo is 23.5 hours after last time you used Duolingo. Because if yesterday you used it at 3 p.m., it's pretty likely that today you're also free at 3 p.m. It's about, that's all the information we have from you. So that's actually pretty good. So we figured that out. And we figured a bunch of things out. At some point, after sending 5 notifications, it occurred to somebody at Duolingo, hey, you know what? We're stopping to send notifications after 5. We should be courteous to people and tell them that we're stopping. So the last notification that we send, we decided at the time, should be, as opposed to telling you to come back, should be, and it said something to, it said, these notifications don't seem to be working. We are going to stop sending them for now. That was our 5th day notification. And when we tried that, it was amazing. It got all kinds of people to come back. Because people were like, oh no, I haven't given up on you, I feel bad, and they would come back. And so guilt was an amazing motivator to try to get people to come back. And because of that, I guess we started, and these notifications all come from the Duolingo OWL. And because of that, I guess the Duolingo OWL started getting a little bit of a reputation of being passive-aggressive. It's like, well, my notifications are not working, I'm going to give up on you. And then, look, we meant for the OWL to be a very friendly creature. But, memes started happening, and this did not come from us, it did come from other people. And then, I particularly like this one. People started making fun of our mascot, basically, I don't know, persecuting them and finding them and kidnapping their grandmother to learn Spanish and stuff like that. And I'm sure you've all seen the memes. It's gone nuts. And so by now, even though we started with our mascot to be, the idea was that it was going to be a very friendly guy. At this point, he's kind of like, he's friendly. All the messages that we send are friendly, but in popular culture, he's kind of like an anti-hero. It's like this kind of weird guy. And so in 2019, I think this is in 2019, we decided to lean into this. There's a lot of memes about this. We decided to lean into this, and so this was a pretty major hit. We put out an April Fool's joke, which we put out this video, and many people believe that it was real, but this is our video. I'm going to show you our April Fool's video from 2019.
Duolingo, we know that learning a language works best when you practice every day. That's why Duolingo sends helpful notifications to users to remind them to practice, practice, practice. But for some users, we found that's just not effective enough. That's why we're excited to launch a brand new premium feature, Duolingo Push. Since Duolingo can be used wherever you are, now Duolingo Push can remind you wherever you are. Whether you're at the gym, at work, or out on the town. That's right, Duo himself will show up anytime you might be in danger of breaking your streak to give you a subtle reminder. It's the green glove treatment that you've been waiting for. A real-life reminder that you can't ignore. You can choose the type of reminder that's best for you. Encouraging duo. Disappointed duo. Passive-aggressive duo. Sign up today for a free trial to get Duolingo Push and never, ever miss a day of practice again. Not now, duo. Okay. I'm doing it.
Okay, what's a little messed up is that I did not, there was a recommended video that had Duolingo and Angry Birds there. Okay, I did not, that doesn't come from me. I don't have any slides about this, but this leads me to my TikTok, or the Duolingo TikTok. If you've seen it, it's unhinged. It's really crazy. I'll tell you, so for those of you who are older than, I don't know, 25, there's this thing called TikTok. I am older than 25, so I am in this audience. We have a TikTok account, and it's very popular. It is, in fact, we know because we have the measurements, it is the single most popular account of any brand. Like any brand, we are 10 times more popular than McDonald's in terms of video views. So our account is basically just our mascot, like that, mascot thing, doing crazy things. And this has been by far the best marketing we've ever done. We have spent on this marketing campaign the salary of a 22-year-old woman. That is the entirety of what we've spent. She's very, very well compensated now. But this all started, and I really love this story. This is a woman, she just graduated college, age 21. And she started, and she was kind of not quite an intern, but almost an intern. She's just like right out of college. And then she said, "You guys don't have a TikTok account." We said, "Yeah, we don't." And she said, "Look, give me 3 months, I'll show you what I can do." And in 3 months, she developed our whole TikTok strategy and started doing that. And by now, and this was, I don't know, 9 months ago, by now we've gotten over 1 billion video views, all without any paid marketing or anything like that, because it's this unhinged thing. If you haven't been following, there's a whole story arc to it. Our mascot now has a crush on Dua Lipa and proposed marriage to her. And there's all kinds of things. Now, let me tell you, we really want Dua Lipa to respond to us. But she won't. She kind of won't. And at some point, we're wondering, does she know that we even exist? But we know that she knows that we exist because her people contacted us. She's willing to respond for $250,000. And so we're like, yeah, no. We think you're going to respond. So anyways, we're going to keep going until she responds. But let me tell you about a little more serious topic, and then I will end with this, which is something, this is very dear to my heart. It's a completely different project. It's called the Duolingo English Test. What it is literally, it is a test that you can go and take on your computer, and it tells you how good your English is. It gives you a score from 0 to 160, and it tells you how good your English is. That's what it is. Now, we started this project from our own users. We started, basically, they started sending us emails saying, hey, thank you so much for teaching me English. I couldn't afford it before, but now I have a problem. I need a certificate that says that I know English. Could you give me one? And we got enough of these emails that we started thinking, we should look into this market. Why do so many people need English certificates? And what we found was really crazy. The first thing is, it turns out somewhere, the exact number I don't know, but it's somewhere around $5 billion a year are spent by people certifying that they know English. This is not learning English. They already know English. This is just to get a certificate that says they know English. There's many reasons why you may want to get a certificate that says that you know English. One of them is university admissions. If you're an international student coming to a university here in the United States, usually you have to take a standardized test that proves that you know English. There's a few of those. One of them is called the TOEFL. One of them is called the IELTS. So international student admissions is one. There's another use cases. work visas in the UK. If you want to get a work visa in the UK and you come from a non-English speaking country, you have to take a standardized test that proves that you know English. Anyways, about $5 billion a year are spent on this. Now, most of it is spent by taking these standardized tests. There's a few, so the TOEFL and the IELTS are the biggest ones. Each one of them makes about $1 billion a year. That's about how much revenue they make. These tests are pretty similar to each other. They cost about $250 each. You have to go to a testing center to take one of these tests, and because you have to go to a testing center, you have to make an appointment weeks in advance, and then you go to this physical testing center, then you take the test, and you have to wait a few more weeks to get your results. So the whole process takes several weeks. You've got to go somewhere, and you've got to pay $250. Now, the reason I thought this was crazy was because most of the people who have to take these tests are in developing countries. Okay, now, $250, that's a month's salary. The testing centers, they're not in every city. They're just in the big ones. So you may have to travel to take this test. And so the whole thing just seemed crazy in an era where you can do everything on the computer. It should be the case that you can take a test online. So we decided that we were going to make our own test, and the big innovation is that you could take our test online. It's also cheaper. As opposed to $250, our test is $50. So you can take a test for $50 and you can take it online anywhere. Now, if you're going to make your own test that you can take online, you have to solve 3 problems. These were the 3 problems that we had to solve. The first is we had to make a test that measures English well. We solved that. The way we solved that is by basically hiring some people with very fancy PhDs who know how to make tests. We did that. The second problem we had to solve is preventing cheating. The reason you have to go to a testing center to take these standardized tests is to make sure that you're you and not your friend, and that you didn't show up with, like, I don't know, some books or some help or whatever. We solved that problem, and the way we solve that problem, by the way, is just by turning on the front-facing camera of the device, and we use a combination of AI and also humans actually watching you take the test, and we can figure out whether you're cheating or not. I'll say a little more about cheating in a bit, but basically, people do try to cheat in our test. About 3% of our people that are taking the test are caught cheating. So we catch them. And then the last problem that you have to solve, which is the hardest problem to solve, is not a technological problem, is if you have your own test, you have to get organizations to accept the results of your test, because otherwise the test is not worth anything. So that's what has been the slowest. So we launched the Duolingo English Test about 5 years ago, and since we launched it, we have been trying to get institutions throughout the world to accept the results of our test as a valid proof of English proficiency. And we've made a lot of headway. And we decided that our strategy was to start with US higher ed institutions for international admissions. So by now, it is accepted by, actually that number is a little outdated, we just hit 4,000. So over 4,000 higher ed programs in the world accept our test. Most of the universities that you've heard of accept the test in the United States. In fact, if you look at the top 25 universities in terms of international student enrollment, these are the large universities like the UCLAs of the world. The top 25 universities, 100% of those accept the Duolingo English Test for proof of English proficiency. And one of the things that I like to say, I show you, is just kind of how this grew. And this is the number of tests that were purchased on a given year. The first year that we launched the Duolingo English Test, which was 2016, we sold 4,000 tests. By the way, 4,000 tests is not a lot. This is just some number. It's because not many universities or not many institutions in general accepted our test. So that was 4,000. In 2017, we grew by 50%, 6,000. Then 10,000, then 17,000. Okay, that's great. We were growing. And then 2020 came. Now, there was a major, major impact in 2020 because of the pandemic. And now, in order to show you what happened with 2020, I need to rescale this graph because it doesn't fit. So in 2020, we sold 344,000 tests. And the reason that this happened is because as soon as the pandemic hit, all the physical testing centers for the other tests closed. And then universities freaked out that they were not going to be able to get international students, so they all came to us and said, okay, now we accept you. And now they accept us. And the good news, though, is that they accept us permanently. So this is not like a COVID bump that goes away. Universities now accept us permanently. And so I don't have the number here, but in 2021, we sold about 500,000 tests. So it's more than in 2020, even though in 2021, the testing centers weren't closed. So it's now like a real part of the admissions process. And one of the things, one of our goals was to make this more accessible. One of the things that we really like about this is that ever since that happened, that really scared the TOEFL and the IELTS because we were taking a lot of their market share. So you know what they did? They lowered their price. So I'm very happy about that because that's one of the things that we wanted. So now the TOEFL is $120 as opposed to $250. So still twice as expensive as us, but half of what it used to be. So I'm very happy with that. In any case, I'm pretty much out of time. I just want to say one last thing, which is I started by saying that we started Duolingo with a mission, and it was all of education. We started with languages. That's kind of what we wanted to get started with. But the mission of Duolingo is still all of education. So we are working on developing apps to teach other stuff. And we already launched one. It's called Duolingo ABC. I don't think any of you are in the target audience. This is for ages 3 to 6. And it is for people to learn how to, well, for people ages 3 to 6, children basically, to learn how to read. And it's a pretty amazing app. You should, well, if you have kids, you can download it. It's free. You can just learn how to read. We're about to launch a math app, but it's elementary school math. We're starting with that. And then after that, we're probably going to do music. And so we're doing all of that. And the idea is that we're going to reuse a lot of what we've done for Duolingo, all the technology that we have, for these things. And hopefully, we'll be able to teach stuff well. We'll see. But that's it. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is now time for the question and answer session. Because this event is being recorded, please raise your hand and wait for a microphone to reach you before asking your question. We reserve the first questions for students, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the audience. We'll now take the first question.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you add Vietnamese as one of the language in Duolingo. My question is that when you design the app, you make it like a video game, and as people learn, you give them small reward in the go. And do you think this will kind of like disrupt the traditional classroom model? Because like in the classroom model, we sit there for like 1 hour or 2 hours to learn, and we don't receive those little rewards as your app do. So what do you think the impact will be on the traditional classroom model? Thank you.
That's a great question. And just to repeat it, what do I think the impact of Duolingo will be on traditional classrooms? And it's not just Duolingo. There's other educational apps out there that are there. I think, so the first thing that I'll say is sometimes people think that what we're trying to do is to substitute the language teacher, and that is not true. We love working with language teachers, and in fact, it is still the case that a good language teacher is significantly better than Duolingo. This is still true. The other thing is, the way we see it is, we're not, the teacher plus Duolingo, I think, are better than just Duolingo, and hopefully better than just a teacher. That's how we see it. So we want to work with teachers, and we want to, for them to use it. Our best estimate is that in the US, at least 40% of K through 12 language teachers use Duolingo in one way or another. That's our best estimate. By the way, I say our best estimate because they don't have to tell us that they're using it, so we don't fully know. And the way we know is we've sampled and we pulled them. I think, so, another thing that I'll say is, before the pandemic, there were a lot of edtech companies, educational technology companies, that would go around saying that their goal was basically to substitute the classroom and substitute schools, and then maybe in the future nobody's going to go to school, blah, blah, blah. We never said that. But a lot of people were saying that. And I think the pandemic showed that nobody wants their kids to not go to school. I think now nobody's talking about that because like, no, you want your kids to go to school. So I don't think where anybody's talking anymore about like, oh, we're going to get rid of schools. Like I don't think that's just not what's going to happen. But I do think that education is changing and is going to change to take more online education into account. And because there are things that I think teachers are better at doing, and there are things that technology is better, and I think we should try to use the best of both worlds. The last thing that I'll say is that is a view that is very first world view. There are many places in the world where people just don't have access to a classroom, period. And there, we want to be about as good as we can, given that they don't have access to a classroom. So that's the last thing that I'll say.
Hello, Professor. I have a question related to CAPTCHA. You mentioned that the reCAPTCHA has helped in the digitization of a lot of books online, but then there's a lot of newer CAPTCHA tests where you need to identify all the cells with a fire hydrant and all of that and stuff like that. So is there any utility to those kind of tests? Have they helped in some sense?
Yes. So if you've used reCAPTCHA of late, the thing that comes up are no longer these distorted characters. Part of the reason for that is computers got really good at that. There may be some tiny examples where humans are better, but it's rare. I mean, generally computers are just really good at it. And so there's two consequences. So the first one is this is not a very good test anymore to test whether something's a human or a computer, but also why get humans to do it when you just get computers to do it? So now computers are doing all the digitization, not humans, so that's that. However, the same idea applies to other stuff. And this is why now you may get like pictures, click on all the fire hydrants. That data is being used, and it is being used for two things. One is, well, in general, the main thing is being used is to improve computer vision, to make it so that computers get better at distinguishing fire hydrants. But the more direct applications are two things: self-driving cars. It is good for a self-driving car to know that something is a traffic light or a stop sign or a bicycle. So it's being used for that. The other one is for mapping software. A lot of times you see, you got to point to the doors. They want to know where the door is, so that whenever you, on Google Maps, you search for an address, they put the point where the door is and not where, like, somewhere else. So that's what it's being used for.
First of all, thank you very much for being here with us today. I would like to ask you two questions. The first one, what is the reason behind that logo? And the second one, what advices would you give to our Dickinson students?
Okay. Okay, you mean for the green owl? Ah, yes, the green owl. Owl is because knowledge, at least in the Western world, an owl signifies knowledge. Turns out this is not true everywhere. I thought it was true everywhere. It's not. And it's green. And that is there's a dumb reason for that. When we were getting started, we had our designers who were working on making our brand identity. And my co-founder, Severin, who was my PhD student, he's like a robot. He's a little bit of a robot. And he said, look, I don't care. I don't care about any of this. I just have one stipulation. And by the way, when he said, I don't care, the designers were not happy. They're like, well, this is the most important thing, of course. He's like, I don't care about any of this, but I have one stipulation. I hate the color green. So we thought it would be funny to make our whole color scheme basically green. So to this day, this is a guy who is the co-founder of a very successful company for whom, the colors are all his least favorite color. In terms of advice, oh man, I would say the most important thing that I like to tell kids at prestigious institutions in essentially a rich country, which the United States is that you've been fed with a silver spoon. You have. I'm sure you all had hardships, so did I. We all had hardships, but really, you've been fed with a silver spoon. And you should make use of that. You're getting the best education that money can buy, really. And you should make use of that. So make use of that for something good for the world. And so don't forget that. That really very, very, you're very, very few people, if you take the whole of humanity, can get an education as good as yours. Make good use of it. That's the last thing I'd like to tell people. Yes?
Hello, and thank you again for being here today. This is an amazing opportunity for everyone, and that's true. We are being here served like an incredible lecture to make us better human beings. And so the idea here I have is how you are continuing to sort of improve the capacity of Duolingo, not to replace teachers, like you said, right? Understood. But to team up maybe with, I don't know, are you teaming up with even textbook companies at this point to work on improving students' access to language education? And how are you doing this right now?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so first of all, textbook companies. Yeah, we had the idea to team up with textbook companies. We did team up with textbook companies. Well, with one, but I think they're all pretty similar. We realized they move at a very different pace from us. They move at their iteration cycle is like 10 years. Our iteration cycle is 2 weeks. And so it was just incompatible. Like we tried to work with them, and it was just like, you know, the time frame, they were like, well, we're doing this for release in 2025. And we're like, well, I don't even know what the hell we'll be doing in 2025. And so our time horizon is just not 5 years long for that type of project. And so this quickly fizzled. It just kind of didn't work out. But you know, we're doing a lot of stuff to try to improve access to education. The biggest one, at least for schools, is we now have a schools product that's entirely free. What it is it's so the students still use the normal Duolingo, but we've given teachers access to a dashboard that they can use to track their students' progress. So we're doing that, and it's entirely free. And it's not because I don't think there's any money to be made from schools. It's just because I think that money to be made from schools is very difficult to make money from schools because you got to talk to superintendents and blah blah blah. So it's just free. So we're doing that, and then the other thing is we're just spending a lot of effort trying to make Duolingo more effective at teaching, and we're doing that's probably the main thing that we're doing. And if you look at inside the company, the largest group of people inside the company are the ones that are improving how well we teach. So sometimes, people have been asking me, like, many of the questions that were here is like, what's hard about your job? And the thing that is hardest about my job is that there are all these constituencies that are very different, and they have very different desires. There's the Duolingo users, there's the employees, there is the shareholders, there is the board of directors, and they all want things that are completely different. I mean, the users want everything to be free. Our shareholders want everything to be paid. That's not compatible. Our employees, boy, they want everything. And so this is kind of not compatible. And so, the hard part here has been trying to just figure out what to spend our resources on. And I've decided that what we should spend most of our resources on is in teaching better. And by the way, this is not a popular opinion in Wall Street. I mean, we're a publicly traded company, Wall Street. And it's not like I'm telling you anything I haven't told Wall Street investors. We've told them that. But they think, well, your largest group of people should be the ones figuring out how to make more money. That's what they would like. We're not doing that. And it's not because I don't like business. It's just because I think in the long term, the best thing for us is to teach better, because I think all kinds of good things will happen from that.
Hi. Firstly, my sister really insisted I send you her regards because she's a huge fan of Duolingo. I, on the other hand, am I have beef with you for CAPTCHA. So, no. But I'll forgive you since we have the same views on education, and CAPTCHA actually made me think of this one idea that Duolingo, I'm surprised, hasn't really gotten behind. So a hobby of mine is just like looking into like voice synthesizers and sounds and audio engineering. And with Duolingo's user base, you could potentially have a free library of like voice assets. So like, given the number of users using like Duolingo to like keep track of their language like learning, why have you not been able to like record some of that and like potentially release like a voice library that could be used? Like, did that make sense?
Yes, it does. So your question is, just to try to understand, your question is, look, we have a lot of people speaking stuff into Duolingo. We have a huge voice library. Why haven't we used that? We're using it. Sorry, I can't hear you.
is like sort of like more like why isn't there like sort of a library for people to like pull from to make their own sort of like voice synthesizer or something like that?
Yeah, so you're asking, we have this huge library, why haven't we given it out? We probably will at some point. I mean, our first thing is to do it ourselves. But yeah.
So first off, as a parent, I wanted to thank you because I was one of the people in 2020 who joined Duolingo because I was homeschooling and it was painful, and we were both working on Spanish to supplement my daughter's Spanish learning. And so I could check her homework. And so one of the things I was curious when I saw Duolingo ABC, I'm half Ukrainian, and before all the stuff in Ukraine started happening, I've been trying to learn Ukrainian. And the biggest issue I had with Ukrainian Duolingo is that it's a different alphabet.
Yep.
And so your Duolingo ABC, is there the possibility of using that to learn other ABCs? Because doing that before doing Duolingo Ukrainian would have saved me watching hours of Ukrainian children's YouTube videos, and my husband going, "What are you doing to our TV?" It was great. He'd walk into the living room and he'd be like, "Is that a cat singing the ABCs?" And be like, "Yes, it is."
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, so right now Duolingo ABC is only for English. We are going to add other languages. It's going to take a little while. There's several stages in developing an app. It seems to me, at least at Duolingo, this, by the way, I'm just going to claim this applies to Duolingo. It may apply to other places, but at Duolingo, it seems like whenever we have an idea for an app, it takes us about a year to launch it. After launch it, the first thing we launch is like, not that great. And it takes us about a year to make it something we're proud of. The Duolingo ABC app has been launched for about a year and 3 months. We just redid the entire interface to something that we're proud of. And that's what all effort has been going into. And then after that, we are going to be working on adding more gamification mechanics. And after that, once the app is really on a trajectory of like, okay, look, this is clearly has product market fit, it has a great trajectory, that's when we start adding other languages. And so, I don't know, give it another year and probably add more languages.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Hi. So during the pandemic, when everyone was at home, we saw a lot of issues with like inequality based on wealth relating to people's ability to access school.
Yep.
You said your mission is to make education as accessible as possible. How can you, like, is there any idea you have to address the issue with like technology and internet accessibility gaps that are seen all around the world?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's one that we talk a lot about inside the company. Unfortunately, no. What I'll tell you is this. We do not believe that we, Duolingo, are the right company to figure that out. I think access to internet probably should be figured out by essentially internet service providers. It's just too different from what we normally do. So what we're hoping, and this is true, price for internet is going down significantly every year. And we're hoping that this will just catch up. And at that time, we will be there and we'll have spent our effort on the thing that we're good at, which is the education part. We're not necessarily good at, laying cables around places and stuff. That's just not our strength. So that's the thing. That's why we don't spend effort on that. But yeah, it's a very fair point that not everybody has access to an iPhone 13 or whatever. No, not everybody has. Very fair point.
We have time for one last question.
Hi. Sorry, I have 2 questions, but I think they're really quick, so I hope that's okay. First, I was really interested by your statistics about Duolingo users learning as much as 4 semesters in university, and I was wondering if you had data on the average time it takes a Duolingo user to do those 5 units.
Yes. Half the time that it takes to do 4 university semesters.
That's really cool. My second question was, about the strategy behind one of the features on Duolingo, the hearts feature. I've talked to some of my friends about it, and we're kind of wondering, like, what's the strategy behind it? Because it takes you, if you lose all your hearts, then you have to wait to take a lesson again. Is there a strategy behind that, or like, what's the approach?
Yeah, the hearts feature, for those of you who haven't used Duolingo, the hearts feature, just as an explanation, what it is when you start a lesson on Duolingo, you have 5 hearts. There's a little number at the top. If you make a mistake, you lose a heart. These are like your lives. If you lose all your hearts, you cannot start new lessons. You can only review old material to regenerate hearts. So basically, if you lose all your hearts, you have 0 hearts, you can only review old material. And by reviewing old material, you gain hearts. You also gain hearts by waiting. If you just sit there and do nothing, every 5 hours you get a new heart. And so basically, if you run out of hearts today, what a lot of people do is, well, I'll wait till tomorrow until these regenerate, or you can go review old material. That's a feature. We added that, I don't know when, 2017, 2016. It's a very controversial feature, not only with users, but with our own employees. And it's kind of like, I'll tell you why we have it. There's 2 reasons. One is we actually like that, if you're making too many mistakes, we want to throttle you because you're probably going too fast. So we actually like that. But there's another feature, and we are very honest about this. This helps us make money. Because by subscribing to Duolingo Plus, by the way we make money is you can learn as much as you want on Duolingo. You don't have to pay us. You can finish the course. You can do whatever you want. But if you don't pay us, 2 things happen. One is at the end of a lesson, you see an ad. We make money from the ads. And then the other thing is if you don't pay us, you have this heart system. However, if you pay us, 2 things happen. You turn off the ads, no more ads. And you can, if you so want, turn off the heart system. And a lot of people pay for that reason. And so ultimately, this is one of the things that allows us to make money. One of the issues we have in terms of supporting the whole thing, just to give you some numbers, it costs $300 million a year to support Duolingo. Like, that's how much it costs. And we have to make $300 million a year. And so we make that by basically, most of the money we make, by the way, is by people paying us the subscription fee. The ads make us some money, but the ads make us like $30 million a year. The subscription fee makes us, I don't know, $250 million or something. And so one of the problems we have is that our free version and our paid version are too similar from each other. There's just not that much. Just turning off ads is kind of not that big of a thing because we give too much away for free. And this is, basically the hearts help us balance that. That's that. Controversial feature. Yes.
That concludes this evening's event. Please join me in thanking Dr. Luis von Ahn.